Hi everyone, welcome back to Academic Rose. Today I'm going to be talking about my thoughts and a general overall review of the iPad Pro 12.9 inches second generation. So let's jump into it. As you may already know, I am a PhD student in the Université du Québec à Montréal, and right now I am in the last stage of being a PhD student. In other words, I am going through the process of my comprehensive exam, which is an exam that determines if you are able to contribute to research and actually be and hold a PhD, and then you turn into a PhD candidate. So I got this iPad on January as a birthday present from my family. So that means that I've been with this iPad since January. So that makes it 2 months in that I've been using this iPad for my everyday needs, and especially to complete all the tasks required for my comprehensive exam. So the idea of using an iPad Pro to replace my computer actually came from Adam, who is my boyfriend. And yes, he's a computer engineer, so I've mentioned that before. And therefore, I trust him with any decision that regards technology and especially gadgets that I'm going to be using. Before that, I used an iPad Air to take notes on each classroom since while I was finishing my bachelor's in industrial engineering, I started using it. I used it throughout my master's, and then finally throughout the PhD courses, I used the iPad Air to take notes. In addition, besides taking notes on an iPad, I use my MacBook Retina display, my MacBook Pro, to do everything else, to write documents on Word, to edit LaTeX, etc. And I still use my MacBook for editing videos and other heavy stuff, but mostly just editing videos right now. In other words, I use my iPad Pro for everything, and I only take out my MacBook during the weekends to, edit videos for Academic Rose. I'm not gonna lie, at the beginning I felt as if everything was slower and took longer on the iPad Pro, and I am not referring to it software wise, either that I didn't know exactly where all the buttons and commands were for doing the things I was used to doing in the MacBook. So there was a learning curve, and it was definitely a learning process to finally be able to have all of my tasks and do everything from my iPad Pro. And considering that I started doing that while I was doing my comprehensive exam, I have to say that even though it took time, it wasn't the worst experience in the world. Therefore, it is doable. Take into account that a comprehensive exam requires many long hours of reading and writing, and the iPad provided everything I needed in order to be able to do that. It's just that I needed to get used to where things are and what apps I would be using that are not necessarily the same as in my Mac, the ones I was used to, or don't look the same way as they did on a MacBook. From the get-go, I started using the iPad to read the papers I was assigned. So for this comprehensive exam, I was assigned a list of 30 papers that I needed to read and make sure that I comprehended to the T, because I'm gonna be quizzed and asked questions about them. So I used the application Adobe Acrobat, to read and annotate my paper, so I highlighted them. I also took notes on the same paper while using this app. And after reading the whole paper, I turned to Microsoft Excel to summarize what I have just read in that paper and the different contributions from the authors and other notes that would be useful for me while I was answering questions, and also to be able to review them before my oral exam. And if you're interested in this whole process, I actually made a video about how to read academic papers, in which I show my screen, the actual screen of the iPad Pro, and how I use these two apps to read and summarize papers. In addition to reading papers, I actually had to write down my answers to 3 of the questions I received for my comprehensive exam. So these were actually 3 compound questions, and each of them had 3 questions within them. I ended up writing a document of about 30 pages or so, and I wrote this document on Microsoft Word, and this is one of the apps that actually took me a long time to figure out where the gizmos and gadgets were, because it looked a little bit different from how I'm used to it in the MacBook. And also, given that I had to write mathematical models, I use a LaTeX editor, which is, in this case, I use VerbTech Pro. And basically, I'm not a super fan of LaTeX, although eventually I know that I'm gonna have to switch to LaTeX to write all of my papers. But this app did fairly well. I did upgrade it to the Pro version to be able to save more documents in it and have more capabilities in that sense, and it was one of the most affordable options in the App Store, and to be honest, that's the reason why I ended up using VerbTech. And it compiled well, it worked very good with LaTeX documents, and since I was just writing my equations there to then screen grab them and use them in Microsoft Word, it did its job, and I'm happy with that. Other non-comprehensive exam PhD related things I used my iPad Pro for included communicating with friends and family, using WhatsApp, Google Hangouts, and even Facebook Messenger. In addition to that, I create various images and I edit photos, not only for academic rows, but also for MORSC, the Operations Research Student Chapter here in Montreal, and for TORCH, which is the Operations Research Challenge for high school students. And I do this with Photos, the native app from Apple. And within Photos, I tend to do basic editing of my photos. Sometimes I would go over to Pixelmator, but to be honest, I haven't used it or needed to use it in the iPad Pro. Another tool I use in my iPad Pro is Canva, but I've been having issues with the iPad Pro app of Canva. It tends to crash a lot and it's not stable, and it gives me problems logging in and logging out from the different accounts, because I have one for academic rows, I have one for the Montreal Operations Research Student Chapter, and I have another one for Torch. So I wouldn't recommend Canva on the iPad Pro, sadly, but it's a great web app if you're looking for something to create your images with. In addition, I went to a workshop provided by Apple in the Apple Store, and I learned about this app called Procreate. And I've been really interested in sketching and trying to get my drawing game on, and I have to say this app is really cool, although I haven't played with it as much as I would like to because, well, I have other responsibilities as a PhD student and I cannot afford to all of them be playtime during the time I'm working on my iPad. But that's an app I would totally recommend, and I hope that eventually I can move into Procreate to create more of my images. Also, I still use my iPad to take notes, and essentially I've been using Notes Plus since I started taking notes on an iPad. I had tried GoodNote, I believe is the name of the app that is really popular right now. But at that time, I didn't like it back then, so I stick to Note Plus, and I've been using it on the iPad Pro. And with the Apple Pencil, I have to say it's really, truly like magic, as if I was writing on a paper. And that's my favorite thing about the iPad Pro. It has to be the Apple Pencil and how it connects with these various apps, and I can use it to annotate my articles, I can use it to take notes during a seminar or a class, and I can also use it to draw and take a peek at my artistic side. And as I mentioned, my comprehensive exam has a second part to it. In addition to the written exam, I also have to pass an oral exam, and for this exam I need to prepare a 30-minute presentation, which I'm gonna be preparing with my iPad Pro. And for this, I'm gonna be using the application Keynote. I tend to use this application for almost every presentation I have given in university, every presentation that I have classmates that agree on using it, or presentations that I can give by myself, because I love the idea of having my iPad connected to my iPhone and being able to control the presentation from my iPhone and see my notes on the different slides and know what to exactly say and control my time, and everything just flows, let's put it that way, when I have my iPad connected to my phone. And it's a great combination to use Keynote in this way. So to wrap it up, I believe that the iPad Pro 12.9 inch is a great gadget. The screen provides tons of real estate to work with within the apps, and you can have 2 to 3 apps open at the same time, which is great to kind of mimic in a way the multitasking of a MacBook Pro. Also, I have to point out again that it was a steep learning curve, so it took time to get used to working on an iPad rather than a MacBook, because the keyboard is different, because the interface is different, and because you might need to look for other apps that you are not yet used to. But once you're used to those apps, once you get to practice with them, it really becomes more like a natural process, and you don't have to think twice to know exactly how you can do whatever you need to do. In addition, I also want to mention that I did go through, and I am still going through, some frustration with the apps I'm using, so I still haven't figured out which apps are the right combination and the best apps for me. As I mentioned, I am deeply frustrated with Canva, and I'm hoping that the developers will fix it, but even if they do, I might still look for another app because I cannot wait till forever. And I really like using my iPad as my primary device because it's very lightweight in comparison to my MacBook, and I can just put it on my backpack, even though it's more or less the same size in terms of the screen of the MacBook. It's not as thick as the MacBook in my case, and keep in mind that I still have a Retina display, But yes, I mostly used it in my apartment and I took it to my office as well, so it's very portable and you can basically work from anywhere as long as you have internet, which is the same thing as for a MacBook. So I would definitely recommend the iPad Pro for students, either for PhD students, for master students, for bachelor students, and even high school students who just want to take notes and go through Facebook and talk with friends, etc. They can do all those things on the iPad Pro. I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it and you found it useful in case you're wondering if you should venture into the tablet world and get an iPad Pro. If you haven't done so already, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and if you want, you can go ahead and subscribe to the Academic Rose and be part of the academic community. I will see you all on my next video. Bye!